Why I love B movies. I don't love B movies because they're bad. I love them because they were never trying to belong. Some of my earliest movie memories aren't blockbusters or prestige films. They're late night reruns. Fuzzy 1950s sci fi, classic monster movies with stiff dialogue and cardboard sets. Grainy 1980s horror that looked like it was filmed by friends who scraped together just enough money to make something move. It was usually watched alone. That mattered more than I realized at the time. There was something powerful about knowing that nobody else I knew was watching these movies. They weren't part of school conversations. They weren't cool. They didn't require context or approval. They just existed, quietly broadcasting on some forgotten channel long after midnight. Watching them felt like tuning into a frequency meant for whoever happened to be awake. That sense of privacy never left me. Decades matter. Not all B movies feel the same, and that's important. The 1950s sci fi films were often completely sincere. They weren't camp yet. Radiation monsters, alien invasions, and mind control plots weren't jokes. They were fear given shape. Bad science was taken very seriously because science itself felt enormous and barely understood. These movies weren't predicting technology so much as expressing anxiety about power arriving faster than wisdom. They play differently now, but the fear still reads. The math is wrong, the dread is not. The 1980s B movies shift tone. This is where DIY energy takes over. Practical effects are pushed past their limits. The seams show. There's playfulness, excess, and a kind of reckless confidence that says, this is what we've got. Watch us make it work. That shift matters because it turns limitation into identity. Evil Dead and the beauty of commitment. Evil Dead is the perfect example of why so bad it's good is the wrong phrase. What's compelling about the movie isn't failure, it's commitment. You can see the ingenuity, the homemade camera rigs, the effects achieved through persistence instead of money. Nothing feels lazy. Every decision feels earned through effort. Bruce Campbell's performance works because it never apologizes. It commits fully to nonsense without irony. That confidence carries the entire film. That's sort of like a punk rock logic there. Make the thing anyway. Own the rough edges. If you've ever built something in the garage, taped together a prototype, or released a project knowing it wasn't perfect, but it mattered to you, Evil Dead doesn't feel silly. It feels familiar. B movies as warnings disguised as entertainment. One of the strangest things about B movies is how often they are age better than polished prestige films. The Terminator didn't predict artificial intelligence accurately. It predicted how powerless people would feel once systems grew beyond human control. Cold, automated, relentless forces that don't negotiate. That fear landed decades before the technology caught up. Jurassic Park isn't really about dinosaurs or genetics. It's a classic creature feature warning about corporate hubris, commercialization of science, and the belief that control equals understanding. Strip away the budget and CGI and it fits neatly beside 1950 monsters movies. B movies often ask the right questions with the wrong tools. That's why they linger. They're emotionally predictive rather than technically precise. They live, and the art of smuggling ideas. They live as a rare case where a B movie slips into the mainstream without losing its edge. On the surface, it's absurd. Sunglasses, aliens, an alley fight that goes on for too long. Underneath, it's one of the bluntest critiques of consumerism and conformity ever put on film. No subtlety, no apology. There's another strength of B movies. They don't dilute ideas for prestige. They hide them in cheap packaging and let them survive because nobody thought they were dangerous. Watching something like that late at night feels different than discovering it through recommendation algorithms. It feels like finding contraband culture. Why this mattered to me? I think part of why I connected to these movies is because I was a loner. Watching B movies didn't make me feel left out. It made me feel like I had something of my own. These films weren't part of the mainstream conversation, just like I wasn't. They didn't demand social participation. They didn't require agreement. They existed off to the side, quietly persistent. There's dignity in that. B movies aren't about being bad. They're about existing without permission, about trying loudly, about making something despite knowing it might fail or be ignored. That idea stuck with me long after the credits rolled. Why I still love them. In a world obsessed with polish, optimization, and algorithms that choose what you're going to like, B movies feel increasingly rare. Not because low budget films don't exist anymore, but because visible imperfection is being smoothed out. I don't want everything perfect. I want to see the seams. I want to feel the effort. I want work that admits it was made by humans under constraints. I don't love B movies because they're bad. I love them because they didn't ask me to belong to anything. They were just there, waiting late at night, broadcasting on their own strange, beautiful frequency.